Well, am I in focus? I shouldn't be too bad. Do you want to know how to take your chord progressions from sounding like this to this? Stick around. Were you ever in a school choir? I ask if you were, especially in your earlier education, you probably found yourself singing very boring lines of music. Sometimes you might have found yourself like singing the same note for a very extended period of time, especially when you made harmony with the rest of the choir. Well, this is thanks to voice leading. I will be discussing the guidelines I would follow when writing a homorhythmic section of music within a piece of music, especially homorhythmic, because the same rules don't necessarily always apply when things get more homorhythmic or polyrhythmic, meaning melody and accompaniment to multiple voices interacting with one another. Understand the following two terms: vertical and horizontal composition. Vertical composition refers to writing in regards to harmony, and horizontal composition refers to writing in regards to melody. So what is voice leading? Voice leading is taking the vertical content you have written and treating each independent line as if they were horizontally written. Why does it matter? A well voice-led chord progression will sound cleaner, more mature, more professional. It will have that like stamp of high quality. You might be wondering why this is. It was originally created to serve as the way to write the most efficient parts a player could play to create harmony with the rest of their ensemble. Meaning they're not jumping around like crazy for no good reason. So, if you're intrigued, let's see how we can do it. In a classical scenario, or education specifically, you will learn about something called part writing. More specifically, Baroque style part writing. And we will be using some of those ideas that you might learn in Baroque style part writing, but just using them in a more contemporary environment. The reason for this is a lot of the time Baroque rules have been broken so many times, our ears are not even accustomed to some of them anymore, especially if you don't listen to classical music. So they don't necessarily apply if you're writing more contemporary music. Even if you're writing even if you're writing newer music, some of the rules from the Baroque and classical era aren't really that applicable anymore. Ask Debussy. But if you guys struggle with part writing and you're already doing it, I can totally make a video on it. Now, we're gonna go into defining 6 more terms, but one of them is the umbrella term, and the other 5 are, in there. So let's go to the umbrella term first, and this is motion. Motion refers to the horizontal movement between 2 chords. What types of motion are there? Well, there's parallel motion, identical movement of 2 different voices that retain their starting interval. Similar motion, 2 voices move in similar direction without maintaining their starting interval. That can be, you have a third, go into a fourth, but in the same general direction. Contrary motion, 2 voices moving in opposite direction. Pretty straightforward. Oblique motion, 1 voice moves, the other one doesn't. A static voice is known as a common tone, so keep that in mind. And static motion, both voices are common tones. When I refer to voices, I am of course talking about the lines of melody that harmony creates. Ready? In voice leading, the name of the game is keep as many common tones as you possibly can. That is pretty much how I would just, We can get more specific though. Now, keeping common tones between two chords won't always be possible, especially if the chord root relationship is a tone or a semitone. So in those scenarios, the name of the game becomes avoid intervals larger than a fourth. Why specifically a fourth? And the reason for this is that the fourth is the largest of the small intervals. What do I mean by small intervals? Well, you can categorize intervals into large intervals and small intervals. At least that's how I like to think about it. I haven't seen that written anywhere. Like, I do research before this just to fact check myself, but no one seems to have categorized them into different sections. So I will explain what I mean and why it's so important to categorize your intervals. So each small interval has an inverse relationship with a large interval. An interval of 1 has an inverse relationship to an interval of an eighth or an octave. A second has an inverse relationship to that of a seventh, a third to a sixth, a fourth to a fifth. Now, another thing to notice is that if one interval is major, the inverse will be minor. Say you have a major sixth, the small interval counterpart is going to be a minor third. If the interval is naturally perfect, then its counterpart is also going to be perfect. I need a pop filter. I have one, but it's broken and it's very disappointing. Now you're going to have to deal with. So no longer than a fourth. Can this rule be broken? Yes, because it's not a rule. We're in a modern world with modern guidelines. That's why I was so specific to choose the word guidelines, not rules. Any of the guidelines that I'm about to give you can totally be completely ignored. Again, as Debbie, okay, and I shouldn't have said that so quickly. Okay, so another thing to notice. Parallel octaves and fifths. These can sound nice. Do try to use them with caution, because if you have too many of them, your lines, remember we talked about vertical against horizontal composition, your lines, your voices will lose independence to one another as far as the melodic content that they have if they have too many parallel fifths or octaves. However, again, this can be very much broken. As I stated before, concentrate on using as much of oblique motion and static motion as you can, because this is going to yield you the best results. So that's what I suggest the most out of anything else that I've said so far. And if you follow all these guidelines, you're going to take your chord progressions from sounding like this to this. Okay, this was a shorty, but I hope you don't mind. I had to compensate for the 20+ minute video that I did last week. More than last week, I've been lazy. Don't forget to please like, subscribe, and please share this video if it was of any value to you. I would totally appreciate it. That would help me so much. And be on the lookout for my upcoming video on orchestral textures. I think it might really be useful for some of you. And don't stop writing. As long as you don't stop, you will continue to get better. Bye.